Well, hello and welcome back to Automation Answers here in the Amazon headquarters in London. And with me is John Prendergast. So, John, it's a pleasure having you on. Thanks for your time. I know you're busy. How's things? How are you getting on?
Good, very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to get this chat underway. We've been talking about it for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, a long time in the making for sure. Yeah, excellent. So usually, a starting tradition, I will jump into your background, your experience, how you've got to where we are now in the wonderful Amazon building. Before we do so, I'm actually just going to start off with a bit of a thank you. I don't really know if you realise the impact and the influence that you have on LinkedIn. I think a lot of corporate organisations say they're aware of mental health. They try and recognise anxiety and depression in the logistics world. And the byproduct of that is, take a day off, take a half day. And in my opinion, I don't know if it's really good enough, but I think what you really do is recognise the issues within the wider society. You actively promote them, you normalise them. And then what is truly inspirational is you give a step-by-step guide as to what you do and how other people can improve themselves as well. And I don't think there's many people doing it in the space. So just firstly, before we set off, a huge thank you to what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And yeah, jumping into things, would you mind just giving us a brief overview on who you are, your background within the forces, and how we've got to Amazon?
Yeah, sure. So, started a long time ago, 30 years ago. Decided to join military after basically looking for jobs in and around my local area. So joined the military at 20 years old. Went straight into the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers as a recovery mechanic. That was my first role, but didn't last long. I understood straight away from the military that, I wanted to get a career out of it. I wanted to get some qualifications and stuff like that. And the ideal way was to get one of the, more premier roles within inside the REME, which is Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. So, yeah, I went on, spent probably around first 3 years training as a electronics engineer, but mainly looking at optical equipment. So that's my specialist trade as an optical engineer, fixing things like binoculars, laser rangefinders and stuff like that. Then I moved to Germany, spent 4 years in Germany. Then we went on to what was a HND course to finish a HND, but at the end of that, finished HND in electronics. Spent another 12 years meandering around in the army, and then decided to leave after 22 years in April 2017 as my last role, which was head of engineering for all field military hospitals within the British Army. So a long, varied career doing lots of different things within the army, test firing weapons in Sweden, fixing bomb disposal equipment, helping design weapons in Ministry of Defence down in Abbey Wood in Bristol, lots of different things, exercises, Sierra Leone with the Ebola crisis, managed to do a bit of work with the team up in York, which is a medical team, 2 medical brigade. Yeah, good, long, varied career, which set on a good stead. So I didn't really want to come out of the army, but there was an opportunity where an old friend of mine who I used to work with at one of the battalions, he said, would I like to come and interview for Amazon? So I automatically thought, Amazon, they just deliver things. They don't do anything. Why would they want someone like me, an engineer? But it then became apparent that there's a big scope of engineers inside and roles inside Amazon for engineers in the RME team. So reliability, maintenance and engineering. So I interviewed. My first role, it was successful. My first role was in Doncaster in LBA2, which is a non-sort site, which is probably one of the newest sites around about 2017. So I helped launch that building. Spent around about 2 years building up my trade as an area manager, learning what leadership was about inside Amazon with all the leadership principles, understanding more about the civilian way of life, which at the beginning I found very difficult, taking me away from the structured life that I already had into a life that said, hey, it's okay not to be on time, which I just, to me, I couldn't get my head around. So I found it quite hard. but I managed to succeed. I then went into another building, LBA1, which is a building next door to LBA2 in Doncaster. Spent a couple of months in there. And then I got an opportunity from the senior management to go and launch a building. So this was Man 4 in Mansfield. I went there in 2019, and it was the first building of its kind to have what you and I both know now. We had MHE or conveyors. It had a pick tower, which some buildings either had a pick tower or it didn't. And then it also had racking. So it was the first building to have all three. And it was a repurposed building, a refurbished building. So all intents and purposes, it was a trial. And successfully, we made it work between the operations and all the rest of the stakeholders and functions within the building. It was a very successful building, which was way much more profitable for the TNS part of the business in customer fulfillment than any other building within Europe.
Yeah.
We then looked at a lot of changes inside that building, but my time had come to an end. I was looking for another venture, and my original manager, who I interviewed for and employed me, asked me if I wanted to come over to this side of the business, which I'm working on now, which was Amazon Gross Logistics. Way back then, it used to be called Prime Now. Then it changed its name to GSF, which is Global Specialty Fulfillment. And now we tend to predominantly look after buildings and refrigeration, mainly across UK, Italy, Spain, and Germany. And we also work with a 3P partner, which is the merchant side, so like supermarkets, Morrison's, Co-op, other providers in Germany and Italy. I think we've got some in France, and Spain as well. So that was my progression from moving out of the army. So really, I've had 2 interviews and 2 successful. So
done well.
100% pass rate.
Yeah, excellent, awesome. And just touch on what you mentioned earlier. I know Amazon have an excellent program taking people from the forces, obviously, into the wide world that is Amazon. You mentioned, obviously, it was a difficult transition for yourself, and I imagine others as well, going from very structured, very organised into a world of logistics, which can sometimes be classed as organised chaos. Not necessarily Amazon specific, but just in general. So how was that transition for you personally?
At first, you hit a wall. Definitely hit the wall, and there's so much to learn. The learning curves, because after 22 years you get to a certain rank in the army, and you seem to have mastered the art. You know everything about the army. You know who should be where, when to talk to. You're told what to do. You tell people what to do. You manage. You lead, and it's a fantastic setup for the rest of your life. But when moving into Amazon, what I did like about Amazon were the leadership principles, and they matched some of the core principles that the army has. So I did like that part. The part that I tended to struggle with is the discipline. I found the discipline, the strictness of the army, and then the sort of freedom that you get in Amazon. I like the freedom, don't get me wrong, but I found it slightly confusing in a way, in that you should get in my old head, it's you get told to do something, you do it, whereas in this, you don't tell someone to do it, you ask, and you work together, and you use your leadership skills and you use your management skills to make gel a team and get projects completed. And there's not much of that in the army. There's no set way of working through projects. It's someone owns something, you're part of that project, you get told what to do. Whereas in Amazon, you are part of a team, you collaborate, you're working together, communication's vital. You've got to make sure that you've got to make sure that you're adapting all your skills and adapting all your leadership skills as the further you move along your career. So in the army, you adapted all your leadership skills, then you have to start again and then use some of the skills, don't get me wrong, but the hard part that I found that was that transition of, discipline, told what to do, where to be, what to wear, when to do it. Quite hard.
Yeah, I'm with you. And would you mind, obviously, how we got in touch and the topic of the podcast, we'll be discussing sort of mental health, depression, anxiety within the logistics world, which is a very fast-paced, very intense environment, like, would you mind touching on, for the people that maybe don't follow you on LinkedIn, the viewers and listeners, a bit about your story and your background?
Yeah, so it's something that I'd never recognised in myself, and I thought it was just the old, just get on with it. It's all in the back of my head. It were always, I'm having a slow day. I don't want to get out of bed today, or I can't be bothered to do that, and it's just little things. And I never thought that they were something that mentally affected me, because I've always been a strong person. But it started to build up about 18 months ago to 2 years ago. It started to build up, and it was building up more and more. And the symptoms that I can probably say are waking up in the morning, not being able to sleep at night, but waking up in the morning, not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to do anything. Then when you do want to get up, and I think we spoke about this before, one of the traits that I found is I struggled to do things for myself. And if I couldn't do it for myself, I lost my concentration. So I'm sat on calls, I'm part of a project, I've got a timeline to meet, and I just weren't interested in meeting that timeline. And two specific moments, and I think we spoke about them before again, is that I remember sitting at the bottom of my stairs and looking at my door for at least 20 to 30 minutes, thinking, I cannot get out that door. If I go out the door, something bad's going to happen. So the anxiety was building up, and it got to a point where I had to then, call a doctor. But before that, there was a point, and I have mentioned this before, and some of my work, quite a few of my work colleagues know about it. I did have a moment where, I was not far from here, Liverpool Station. I was in the underground, and I wanted to step off in front of the train, which was absolutely life-changing for me. I remember thinking, I can't do this because other people rely on me. It's the cheap way out. It's not the right thing to do. And in my head, it kept saying, on my shoulder, someone saying, go on, do it. Just do it, because everything will be gone then. Everything's finished. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to be scared. You don't have to. And I don't know what stopped me. I just remember seeing my kids, remembering my kids and things like that. And I pulled myself back from that. And that's when I got back. I got back home the next day. That's when I was sat on the doorstep, looking at the door, thinking, I need to go and get help. And I reached out to my manager, reached out to my colleagues, my family, and said, look, something's wrong. Something's not right. I don't know why I did that, and I don't know why I'm doing this now. I don't know why I'm not being able to get up, not being able to get out the door. So I contacted Amazon's support functions, and they put me onto a therapist who then started to build a picture of what was causing this problem. There were no pinpoint. It was more a build-up of anxiousness about not being able to finish projects, or not being able to provide for my family, or there's no money woes, all just different things that managed to pinpoint. But then they gave me tools to use to be able to take me away from that. So thoughts of not being able to provide, for instance, take me away from that, and using different tools, cognitive theory and stuff like that, which then helped me to start getting out of the house, then moving into, then sitting on calls and listening in and being more active and more, because I'm an outgoing person, absolutely, but when I want to be, I can then be an introvert. So I need time to reset, relax, not talk to anybody, just listen. And once I've done that, the batteries are refilled, and then I can go again.
Yeah.
But when I go again, I go at 100 miles an hour. So, that's what I constantly do, is constantly going around in a circle where I have to rest. And the rest is probably a day or two, which is weekends are good, because that's why they were invented.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I have my rest. But Also, I needed I needed to do something, because in the military we did stuff. You know, we went. There were so many exciting times, and the thing is, 99% of being in the army is boredom, but that 1% is something that you can never imagine. So I needed to get that 1% back, which is where we met.
Yeah.
Which is where you saw some of my travels on LinkedIn, some of my adventures, and this is a great way for me to take that time and that quietness and the well-being and mental silence to say, this is me, I'm doing it. What I will do is I will go and travel to, I've just come back from Milan. I went traveling to Turin, Genoa, but I didn't know where I was going. I just landed. I've been to Norway. I landed in Oslo. I had no plans, no accommodation booked. I had a small bag, and all I wanted to do was just get to Oslo and then see where it took me. So I've told you before, I met two Americans on the way when I landed. These Americans asked me if I wanted to go hunting in North Norway, and I thought, yeah, this is a brilliant idea. Let's do this. This is an adventure.
Yeah.
But something stopped me, and I went, hang on a minute. If I go all the way to Northern Norway, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get back, and I've got a flight from Norway, so I stopped that. So then I went travelling. I got on a train. I went to Stavanger. I managed to, that night, I was sat in a bar, and the guy who owned the bar let me sleep above the bar in one of his rooms for free. That was fine. I was good with that. Next day, popped up, and that morning, or that night before, I was talking to two guys who worked on container ships that went up the coast to Bergen. So they said, well, there's a ferry at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you've got to get to it, and it's 19 miles away. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So I got up at 4 o'clock, got on one of the little scooters and scooted my way all the way to
19 miles,
I got halfway, scooted my way all the way to the ferry port, and then got on the ferry and just took the 5.5 hour ferry to 7-hour ferry up the coast, got into Bergen. Got to Bergen, so this is on a Wednesday, so I'm halfway through my week, and I'm thinking, right, now what? So I had to walk around Bergen, and just, it's the adventure, and it's the not knowing what's going to happen next, and not having, and it's a bit counterintuitive in that in the army I wanted the structure, but doing this I don't want the structure. I want it to be an adventure. I want something to fail, so I then go, right, you've got to get out of this somehow.
Yeah.
It's 11 o'clock at night. You've got to find somewhere to go to sleep. So that's the adventure that I like, and it's all about talking to someone. They'll tell you, there's some accommodation here, or you can go here and stuff like that. So finally on that Norway journey, I got the train all the way back to Oslo, going via a little journey into the mountains on the train, and I flew back. Yeah. But never planned anything. Yeah. And that's the adventure of it, and that's what we spoke about. And you said you were going to go and buy a watch, but you've not bought one.
No, I'm getting there. I'm saving up. But no, thank you for sharing. I think we'll touch on some of your more crazy travels in a minute. But going back to what you mentioned, and obviously reaching out to your support team and the management and getting therapy, I think there's a huge stigma in the world about being able to reach out, how to reach out, and recognizing the points or the key stages. And like you mentioned, it's not just one thing, it's a build up of lots of different things, 9 or 10 things that people need to be aware of to go reach out to people and to go into therapy. So what would you say that the key points are in terms of, I'm experiencing this and this is why I need to go to therapy?
Yeah, look for the stress points. I mean, everything starts from stress, and it integrates into and it builds a level of stress to anxiety to depression and to other things that we not really should discuss. But the stress one is the first one, and as soon as you can identify in the stress, and stress can come in, you'll know if you are stressed, because there'll be little points, and you'll leave parts of a project because you don't want to do it. Let's say you're writing a huge document for someone, and the stress around it is this document going to pass? That's the stress point that the anxiousness comes from not being able to complete it. So identify that in yourself, but identify other things like, you're not eating properly, you're not, exercising, you are failing to meet targets. You're less quiet on calls, or you're not engaging with people properly. Try and spot those little things, and if they start to elongate, as in, you're leaving it to the last minute to get out of bed, or you're getting out of bed and you're not showering, and you're not looking after yourself. They're the little triggers that you need to spot. And if you can spot these early, just go and talk to someone, or reach out to your HR, or reach out to someone at work, and there should be, and in this day and age, there should be signposted easy where you can find some mental well-being or some mental health, and spend a bit of time. A lot of these things can be alleviated just by mental well-being and mindfulness, mindfulness is not easy to do. Mm-hmm. It's like training a muscle. You can't just run a marathon. You've got to train to do it. And I'm going to be controversial. It is boring to start with, right?
So is training for going to the gym, though. So
I know, yeah. It is boring to start with. But if you're seeing these traits in yourself, train your mind, because your mind's a muscle. Train your mind to say, relax, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. And this is my saying, and if anybody from Amazon sees this video, they'll go, I always say, look, Mrs. Miggins will get her hairdryer tomorrow, right? This is the logistics side of it. Mrs. Miggins will get a hairdryer tomorrow. She doesn't have to have it tonight. It will get there, but we should try and, put the customer first, because that's all we wait for. They're our employers. But don't put your own health in the way of doing anything else, getting yourself into trouble. So, look for the signs. If they start to elongate, make sure that if you have got the tools to be able to bring yourself back, then that's great. But if you haven't, you've got to be able to talk to someone. Are you eating correctly? Are you getting up at the right time? Are you leaving everything to last minute? Are you quiet on calls? Or if you can spot someone like that in your team, just reach out to them. Mm-hmm. Are you okay? Everyone will say yes. Mm-hmm. Ask it twice, but mean it the second time. Yeah. Because the first time it's just okay. Second time, no, but are you okay? Yeah. And they might come out with something. You might just spot something that will stop someone going down that elongated track of going into a dive into stress, anxiety, and all that, and along the track.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And do you feel we are a victim of our own success in the logistics world, in the sense that we've created a huge network where I can buy something now at 2:00, and by the time I get home, it has arrived, which is brilliant. We have the infrastructure, and you can have same day or next day delivery depending on where you are in the world. But the wider issues that come from that is the stress on the workforce and the day-to-day operations that you don't see behind the scenes, obviously, unless you're exposed to that world.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to get it in every walks of life, whether you're in banking, whether you're in logistics, wherever. But I think from this point of view, you've got to, take a project, for example. There's a deadline. And as long as you've got all the leadership management principles in place and all the support structure to get to that deadline, then it shouldn't be any stress behind it. Collaboration, if you've got the technical ability, if you're working in a project that's a technical project, you need to have quite a few things. Probably about 7 or 8. So you need to have a technical ability. So if you're working in a project that needs a technical role, you're going to struggle, but as a project manager, you should be able to see your way through if you've got some of the skills. Communication is vital. If you're communicating well, that's great, but you've got to communicate and show a vision of what you want as a leader. You've got to communicate and show a vision. So if you can't communicate to your team correctly, then the rest of the team is going to fail. They're going to get stressed. You're going to get stressed because the project's not moving. You're not at the right targets. Yeah. Inclusivity. Exactly in that, if you have large stakeholders on a project, you've got to make sure that all the different stakeholders of that project are included in all the communication. It's got to be, you've got to be able to make sure that if the project's starting to fail, that you're bringing the right people in at the right time. Resource management. Cost. Mm-hmm. You could get stressed over cost. Reach out, communicate. You could get stressed over people resources. You could get stressed over materials. The stress is always there. As long as you've got a team that's working alongside you and collaborating, and collaboration is quite important, then the stress should be alleviated. The project goal is always it's always there. It can change, it can change at any point, but if you've got all the mechanisms to use with leadership, you should be okay.
Absolutely. And do you feel automation in terms of MHE, robotics and technology can aid some of the more monotonous or boring tasks to try and take some of the pain away from the manual operations that are happening in the warehouse?
Yeah.
Obviously, they can work 24/7. We can work them. We can run them into the ground. They don't get burnt out like we do. Is that a temporary solution?
Technology is exciting, right? Because you've got to innovate to stay up to date. If you're not innovating, you're going to be left behind. So with the MHE or conveyors that we've got, with the robotics that we have in Amazon, with all the rest of the technology that we have, that's always moving forward. We're always looking to try and replace technology with better technology. So, I mean, we're starting to use AI quite a lot. All businesses are starting to use AI quite a lot, and we've not even scratched the surface. So, if you don't keep up with that technology movement, then you will be left behind. You will get into a position where that technology that you are looking at is old technology, and as an engineer or a manager, you're working in old technology. So what will happen then is when, let's say, you move to another business, your CV will only say that you're working on the old technology. So keep up to date. Make sure that your skills and your awareness of what's coming in, the new innovation that can do, and Amazon does this fantastically. It's always changing. The business is always changing because the customer always wants something different. We've always got to make sure that we're working towards what the customer wants and work backwards, not put a technology in just to solve a problem.
Yeah.
The problem is, how do we give what the customer wants and then put the technology in place to make sure?
Oh, brilliant. And before we go back onto your travels and adventures, which I'm really keen to talk about, peak period, which in the logistics world is anywhere from Black Friday up until January, I guess, it's basically all year round now with the way the world is, but that's a general sort of time frame. What are the stresses of the whole workforce, from operations to engineering to projects, that you've seen in the logistics world?
So in our side of the business, in what we look at is refrigeration and buildings. In our side of the business, there is the peak. There is a peak all year because everybody is constantly looking, getting bread and milk, and they want it today, and then, they need it quick or fast. So it's always a peak in our side of the business, and it's a very fast-paced. In the business of customer fulfillment, with delivering to the customer and the last mile and that sort of thing. With peak, people are demanding and ordering a lot of stuff. Yeah. So the workload ramps up. So the breakdowns, as an engineer, come more quicker. So the way that we should deal with that, and the way that we deal with that, is making sure that the engineering maintenance plan across an individual site is fit and purposeful for that equipment. So if it's just a plunger, we don't need to manage that and put as much maintenance into that. But if it's an high value piece of equipment, like your MHEs or your robotics, you've got to put more maintenance in. Yeah. How does that ramp up for the RME team and the engineering team? I suppose the management and the teams together, they work to ensure that they've got a contingency plan, and there's a redundancy in there. So if this happens, what do we do next? We don't wait for it to happen. We always have a plan to make sure that if that fails, what do we do next? And how do we make sure that if that's failed, it doesn't fail again? So there's always a cause, an effect of how it's happened. We look at that cause and effect, and we try and reduce that as much as possible. So it's, and if everybody knows that plan, if everybody knows and understands how that works, then the stress of that and the anxiousness of failing in peak slightly slides away. Yeah. And I know this for a fact because it happened to me in Man 4, where the building, all the lights failed, and all of a sudden the operations teams and all the rest, and the learning development teams, all the lights failed, and we had already trained to do this. So of the 5-man team that were in that site, everybody knew exactly where they needed to go. So some of them went to the powers, Someone went to the doctor, someone went to the MHE, and we all got on the radio and said, right, Daz, can you make sure that the power switched on? Switch it on bits by bit. And we had the whole building back up and running in 9 minutes.
Wow, okay.
There are other sites that are, that have been off for hours and hours, but it's making sure that contingency plan, and they're the little plans that you put in place during peak to make sure that everybody's knows exactly what they're doing, when they're doing it. And, it relieves a bit of pressure. And you should have fun all the way through it.
Of course,
right?
That's the main thing.
Absolutely have fun, because some of our peaks have been absolutely amazing. Some of the stuff that we've done, it's great.
Yeah, that's good. And so I think the first part, you mentioned obviously recognising the stresses, recognising the burnout, reaching out and going to therapy. From there, I think that's a that's a big step. But then an even bigger step is actually recognising the issue and then getting better, right? I think it's one thing to recognise and another thing to take action. Like you said, it's very boring.
Yeah.
And then getting better. What would you suggest, and what have you done personally? Obviously, we connected through your crazy travels. I know you're off to Berlin soon, which will be good fun. So what have you done personally, and how do you overcome such times?
So, we spoke about geocaching.
No.
You don't know what geocaching is?
No. Tell me.
So geocaching is a worldwide practice that people can carry out, and all over the world there's millions and millions of little hidden treasures. When I say treasure, it's a treasure. I take my kids geocaching. So outside you can have an app on your phone, and on your phone near you now, anywhere, and anybody who's watching this now, open up your phone and search geocaching app. Open that app, and in there will be a map of where you are located, and people then hide little boxes, and inside that little box is a piece of paper, or there might be what they call a trackable item, so you could put a key ring in there. And what you do is you sign it to say you've been there, you record that you've been there, so that's you recorded.
Yeah.
So I take my kids out and I give them the phone, and we go walking around, and we've been everywhere. I mean, we were in Alicante last week for a meeting. I nipped out and did a geocache. I went off on a bit of mindfulness, and everywhere I go that's different, I always manage to go and and get a geocache. And it's strange, unless you can see the app, it's just like a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure hunt, but your kids can do it. You can do it with your kids. You can do it on your own. I've done it in Kosovo, Croatia, done it in UK, lots in the UK, Norway, Italy, France. There'll be one in Germany next week, in Berlin, Spain. So one of the things I like doing. Travelling is a good one. The reason I do the travelling is because I like to get out and see different cultures. I like to get out and see, eat different foods, see different people around Europe. And I'm just trying to control it into Europe a minute. I've got another one planned for next year. I don't know if I've told you.
No, you haven't.
I've not told you that one yet. But yeah, so it's getting out there and travelling. Like I say, I went to Milan. My next trip coming up is I'm actually working in Germany, but I will be spending a couple of days for myself over the weekend to go and go around Berlin and just do a bit of sightseeing, travelling. Not as much as I would when I usually do, what I usually tell you, because I usually just land somewhere and then
and go crazy.
Go crazy. Like in Milan, one of the things I did in Milan is when I got to Milan, I went to the Milan main train station, and on LinkedIn I asked people at what time shall I get the train. So everybody voted on what time I get the train. And I think it was the 10 to the hour. So the 10 to the hour train took me to Turin. So I had to get on that train. So I got on the train to Turin. I went walking around the train. I always try and visit a military war grave as well wherever I go, just pay a bit of respect. Went to Turin. Then the next day, I went to the train station, and the first train that I saw said Genoa. I would open it, we're going to take me back to Milan.
It's not that easy, though.
It's not that easy. You can't say the rules there's no rules. There is no rules. I went to Genoa, spent the day in Genoa, struggled to get a train back, and then ended up back in Milan. But yeah, these are adventures. So my next, like I said, my next adventure is Berlin, but I've got another one coming up in September, which is rambling round Ireland.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so
very nice.
I'm going to the Leytown, which is where the race horses on the beach.
Okay, yeah.
I've never seen it. I've never done it. A good friend of mine said he wants to go and do it. He's never done this rambling travels. So I took a friend to Bologna a couple of years ago. Yeah, I think a couple of years ago. We landed in Bologna, no plans. We went from Bologna to Florence. We got to Florence and then decided to go to Pisa, go and see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, then come back to Florence. But yeah, when we get to Ireland, it's just a rambling, just see how far we can get round in a week and then get back.
Oh, excellent, yeah. That's really cool.
What more do you want?
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah. But I mean, in all honesty, though, I think it's brilliant that you're doing that. It doesn't necessarily, I guess it depends on the individual person and their personality and their characteristics. It doesn't necessarily have to be as extravagant as that, right? To de-stress or to get out of the environment they're in. You know, it could be somewhere local in the UK. But I do agree with you from a personal point of view as well. I think adventure is what keeps us young, and I think that's what keeps us stimulated. You know, because going to work, no matter how fun your job is, it is repetitive, which is good in some cases. But everyone needs a break and everyone needs a change of scenery. So I think you highlight some good points there.
Yeah. I think you've got to be able to tell a story because we are one life and we're only here for so long. If you've got nothing to tell at the end of it, then at the end of it, it's just the end.
Yeah.
But please try and get out there and visit something. Do something out the ordinary.
Yeah.
Because when your kids grow up, you say, "Oh, Dad, I can remember when you told us you went to Milan and just jumped on the trains." Yeah. And it's inspiring to some people, like seeing it on. You know, I've had quite a lot of people come up to me since I started these journeys. And doing the updates, which, and I've also, which is quite important to me, I've had a huge amount of people contact me and said, look, I actually connect with you. I feel that way as well. Even a good friend of mine from when I was in 2 Medical Brigade in York, I didn't know. I didn't know he was, you know, depressed, and he contacted me and said, look, I'm in the same place as I can't believe that you're telling everybody, but he says, I'm going to go and see someone, which is fantastic. And now I see him on LinkedIn, he's thriving, he's out there, he's doing stuff, smiley face. Well, he never used to have a smiley face.
Yeah.
But also remember, it's not all, the ones that are smiling could also be in that position. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot. I mean, it's in, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of people that have contacted me and said, I like what you're doing. I can empathise with it. I can also see some of what's happened to you in me. And you're one of them in that you said, I'm going to go and buy myself a watch, and you still not got it.
No, I haven't. I'm saving it. I said they're expensive now. I'm saving up. But so you highlight some really good points. And I think, you know, obviously life is a journey. You've got to have fun. But again, and echoing what I said at the start, I think generally, and I know people do reach out to you, but the wider audience that you do inspire, myself included, is genuinely incredible. And I think the fact that, like I said before, you recognise and you actively promote it's okay not to be okay, but then you give a step-by-step guide to say, this is what I'm doing. It's truly incredible. So, John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. And we'll catch up very soon. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, John.